Nusr-Et, better known as Salt Bae Steakhouse, may be one of the most divisive restaurants in New York City. Food critic Steve Cuso called the establishment a ripoff as the menu is filled with dishes bearing eye-watering price tags. There are even steaks on offer that cost well over $1,000. However, I thought that I should try the restaurant for myself, and there were definitely aspects that I did not like, but there were also things that surprised me and I enjoyed. One thing's for sure, I definitely had a memorable experience, and I even got to meet Salt Bae.
It's a beautiful day here in New York City. Right now I'm at Bryant Park and I just had lunch at a restaurant that I never really had a single desire to go to, but one that I felt compelled to try at least once. I went to Nusr-Et, which is more commonly known as Salt Bae's Steakhouse. Now, I am not a fan of Salt Bae, and I think his restaurants are massively overpriced. Plus, there are so many other amazing steakhouses here in New York City. Why would I go to his restaurant? Well, the fact of the matter is, for better and for worse, mainly for the worst, Salt Bae is an embodiment of how restaurants these days can be catapulted to success through the use of social media. He was able to build off the success of a simple little Instagram video of him cutting up and salting a steak in a very amusing manner into a worldwide restaurant empire. Because of this, he kind of has cemented himself into culinary history. But not all history is good. However, I'm the type of person that loves all these different culinary experiences. This is what I seek out, from the super fancy high-end 3 Michelin starred establishments to the casual hole in the wall, and in this case, the over-top and ridiculous. But yeah, Salt Bae's restaurant and those like his, they're not exactly my thing. Having said this, I feel like I should at least try his restaurant, you know, be able to at least say that I went there and check off that box. Plus, I saw on his Instagram that he's in New York right now, so if I would actually be able to see him in his restaurant, well, that'd be interesting. In fact, I actually met him at my lunch today. So this was my experience at Salt Bae Steakhouse, and it was something.
Nusr-Et Steakhouse is located in Midtown Manhattan on the ground floor of an office building. At one time, Salt Bae had as many as 3 restaurants in New York City, including a burger spot that shut its doors in 2023 and a sister steakhouse in the Meatpacking District, which closed during the spring of 2024. Nusr-Et Gökçe, better known as Salt Bae, spent years working in restaurants but opened his own in Istanbul in 2010, followed by an establishment in Dubai in 2014. It was when he started posting videos of himself cutting and salting meat in unique ways on Instagram and Twitter that put him into the spotlight. One video in particular, posted in January 2017, skyrocketed his fame and led to a worldwide restaurant expansion. However, Salt Bae has faced his share of criticisms and controversies, but I wasn't in Manhattan that day to criticize Salt Bae as a person, just as food and restaurant. It was noon on a Tuesday and arrived to Nusr-Et right as it opened for lunch. Once I was seated, I took in the dining room. There's no question about it, it's a fine looking space with sharp finishings, tall ceilings, and a decent amount of room between tables. It's also a large restaurant as it extended to the complete opposite end of the building. I was, however, worried that the music would be too loud. It just felt like that type of place that I would have to bring earplugs to enjoy myself. Thankfully, at least for lunch, I felt that the music was played at a reasonable volume. Although, one concerning note was the lack of customers. I think it may have been about 20 minutes before another group of diners were seated, and throughout my lunch, there just weren't that many people that came in, which is surprising because Nusr-Et is located right across the street from one of the top tourist attractions of New York City, the Museum of Modern Art. Nevertheless, I thought that the restaurant had a good atmosphere and my lunch was off to a nice start, but that was about to change as I began to look over the menu. Nusr-Et is expensive. On the left side of the menu were the appetizers, sides, and seafood. Price-wise, most of that selection was a bit above average, but there is nothing too dramatic. However, the grilled prawns made me raise an eyebrow. If one scans the QR code at the beginning of the menu, the courses even come with pictures. The dish looked good, but with only 3 prawns and a $51 price tag, there was no way in hell that I was going to order that. Although the course seems like a bargain compared to the steaks on the next page. much. No, those prices aren't in pesos, they're in US dollars, making Nusr-Et one of the most expensive steakhouses in New York City. Now, there were a lot of great sounding steaks and entrees on that menu, and I appreciated seeing some of the more unique offerings like the bone-in short ribs, but everything was just so costly. Even the lower priced dishes were expensive and not very large. For instance, the spaghetti, which was thinly sliced Wagyu strip loin, was only 7 ounces and it came with a $75 price tag. As a point of comparison, I enjoyed a pleasant 10-ounce Wagyu New York strip at the Lamb's Club, which also came with a great array of sauces for only 68 bucks. In fact, prices at Salt Bae's restaurants are so high that a group of diners at his Dubai establishment spent around $108,000 on their dinner. Salt Bae posted the receipt to his Instagram and some people were a bit offended. Thankfully, Nusr-Et has recently been trying to lure in customers with their 3-course $39 lunch menu, which was prominently displayed outside the restaurant. When I was in Dallas some months ago, the Nusr-Et location there did the exact same thing. While I feel like most of Salt Bae's offerings are overpriced, the special lunch menu on the other hand seems like a fair deal, especially for Midtown Manhattan. What wasn't fair were the ridiculously priced gold courses. There were multiple steaks, lamb, and even a burger offered, which were covered in gold leaf with insane prices to boot. While I've seen Salt Bae present multiple gold steaks to his guests on Instagram, the dishes are certainly eye-catching, but the reality is gold leaf doesn't add any flavor and it's not even that expensive. For instance, one could get 20 small sheets of gold leaf off of Amazon for about 7 bucks. Taking that into account, I think that the gold menu is just absurdly overpriced. However, if you really want a gold steak, I would recommend going to Empire Steakhouse, as they offer a golden 24-karat Wagyu tomahawk for 2 for $495. Now, I still think that's overpriced, but at least you wouldn't be wasting as much money as you would at Salt Bae Steakhouse. Although, I actually think the craziest gold option on the menu is the golden cappuccino. It just seems like a basic cappuccino with gold leaf over the top, and it's sold for $75. Thankfully, not all the drinks at Nusr-Et are that expensive, but the glasses of wine and cocktails didn't really interest me. Besides, I was at the restaurant to waste my money on food, not drinks that I could get elsewhere. And on a side note, a Red Bull at the steakhouse cost $10. Anyway, after ordering, I didn't have much of a wait for my steak and the performance that made Salt Bae famous.
Ready? Oh yeah.
Let's do it. Showtime. A new bread. New York.
Nice.
Wow.
Thank you.
The whole theatrics of cutting up and salting the steak may not have been necessary, but you know what? It was fun. This is part of the reason why people go to Salt Bae's restaurant, for the show, to capture pictures and video, and to have a unique experience. However, for me, it all comes down to the food, and my steak looked pretty good. I went with one of the quote-unquote affordable options that wouldn't leave me hungry. I got the 14-ounce prime New York strip, which was $77. Now, I still think that the dish was a bit overpriced, but not nearly as much as some of the other options on the menu. Nevertheless, I was excited to give it a try. The steak wasn't bad. In fact, it was good. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't seem to me that the meat has been dry aged, which is what I tend to prefer when it comes to steak, but it still had a decent beefy flavor. I also appreciated just how tender the steak was. Now, it wasn't quite melt in your mouth tender, but it was pretty juicy. As far as the temperature, I ordered my steak medium rare, and I felt that the beef was a bit more on the medium side, but it wasn't anything too dramatic which would prompt me to send it back. One thing that I particularly enjoyed were the luscious little bits of fat on each slice, which were a true joy to eat. Regarding the finishing salt on the steak, it's something that I really appreciated, especially since that steak in particular didn't have any funky dry-aged flavors. The salt just adds that extra bit of pop to the beef. However, it wouldn't be a proper meal at Salt Bae's restaurant without some over-the-top salting theatrics. While it may be mildly amusing, it's not the best salting technique, as only a bit of the salt actually hit my steak, with the rest going on the serving tray and table. From a slight distance, the dish containing my steak looked like it was prepared from a chef with a serious dandruff problem. Thankfully, on every table is a jar of flaky sea salt, which is a hell of a lot better than your standard table salt. I I tried a bit on my steak and it was very nice. However, it got me thinking about how many people disregard the spoon and reach into the jar with their grubby little fingers and try to do their best Salt Bae impression. Oh well, it was good salt. Alongside my steak, I got a side. I went with the mashed potatoes, which looked decent. Now my steak was good, but my mashed potatoes were excellent. They were rich, very flavorful, and texturally on point. Basically, I really enjoyed that side dish. The course came with a price tag of $14, which is in line with most New York City steakhouses. Meat and potatoes is a classic pairing indeed. Overall, I was enjoying my lunch, especially when I wasn't thinking about how much I would be paying for everything. And I've gotta say, the service was excellent. Everyone was really nice and attentive, although it's not like there are many people to attend to in the restaurant, but nevertheless, it was good service. After finishing my steak inside, it was on to dessert and there weren't many options. All of them were clearly overpriced, but I thought, you know what, this may be the only time that I get to go to Salt Bae's restaurant, so I bit the bullet and got the $25 baklava, which also came with a show.
Nice.
Now I understood the cutting and salting theatrics with the steak, but the baklava preparation seemed a bit unnecessary and silly. However, I just sat back, shut off my brain, and had fun with it. The dessert was the pistachio baklava with ice cream.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Excellent.
After the tableside preparation, the dish looked a little sloppy on the plate, but I've actually seen pictures of the baklava from the restaurant looking much more beat up, like it was involved in a small-scale street fight. Nevertheless, I was still excited to try it. It was pretty good. Not $25 good, but it was pleasant. The dish was clearly fresh and had a nice pistachio flavor. It was pretty flaky too, and everything was nicely balanced. Now I've had a lot of baklavas, but never one with ice cream, and I thought that it was a great combination. Overall, it was a good dessert, but the issue was that the price was double what it should have been. In summation, there are positive elements of Nusr-Et. It's a nice looking restaurant, the service was on point, and the food was at least good. However, I just think it's so painfully overpriced. Now, I feel like the $39 lunch menu is a step in the right direction, but the main menu needs some work. I was happy with my 14-ounce New York strip, even though it was probably about $10 to $15 higher than what it would cost in most New York City steakhouses. What the restaurant needs is more steaks like that, like a ribeye or filet, and a decent size for a single diner. It doesn't have to be Wagyu, but prime will certainly work. After finishing my dessert, it was time for the most painful moment of any visit to one of Salt Bae's restaurants: receiving the bill. My lunch totaled to $126.30, but with my tip, I spent a bit over $150, which was definitely costly, especially considering that it forgoed any beverages. Before I left, I saw the man himself, Salt Bae, and I asked for a photo. Now, I'm not much of a fan of him, but I do appreciate the fact that he spends a considerable amount of time in his restaurants. To sum it up, I definitely had an experience that day.
So that wasn't terrible, but my God, was that expensive. And I think I chose some of the more reasonably priced dishes. And when I say reasonably priced, I mean it's not as overly expensive as some of the other stuff on the menu. But make no mistake, my steak was definitely overpriced and my dessert was really overpriced. Now the $14 for the mashed potatoes, that's kind of in line with a lot of the top-end steakhouses for sides, and those were awesome mashed potatoes. I mean, I gotta give credit where credit's due. I really enjoyed that side dish. My steak was good, my baklava was good too, but it just didn't coincide with the amount of money I paid for them. The thing with Salt Bae's restaurants is that they're in big cities with a lot of other steakhouse options. Why would somebody go to Salt Bae Steakhouse when they can get a better steak for less. Now it's true, there are some unique courses on Salt Bae's menu, but they're just so expensive. And the gold stuff, oh my goodness. I mean, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it. But to each their own. If you want a gold steak, go for it. I mean, it's your money. What the hell business is it of mine? At the end of the day, there are good aspects of Salt Bae's restaurant. I mean, it is a beautiful establishment, and the service was excellent. I really liked my server. He was a great guy and a true professional. And like I said, my food wasn't bad. It was just the prices that I hated. You know, a couple months ago, I went to a Longhorn Steakhouse, the sort of massive casual steakhouse chain, and had a decent lunch. I mean, the steaks aren't anything special, but with that restaurant, you at least get what you pay for. Now, it was pretty neat to meet Salt Bae, and that is actually one thing that I respect him for, is that he does put in the time at his restaurants. He shows up, takes pictures with customers, he does the performance people expect from him. In contrast to a lot of other celebrity chef branded restaurants, you will hardly ever see the celebrity chef step through their doors. Overall, my experience at Nusr-Et wasn't terrible, and I think I prepped myself well in that I knew that I was going to be overpaying for my food, so I just sat back and embraced the experience for what it was. So would I recommend Salt Bae's Steakhouse? No, it's just so overpriced, and there are so many other better steakhouses in New York City. In conclusion, I'm at least glad I can check Salt Bae's Steakhouse off my list, and it wasn't the worst restaurant I've been to this year. I mean, it's way better than Bar Pity, that's for sure. Plus, I still had steak for lunch, and that is something to certainly be grateful for.